When we look at these videos of Shelly's clients, we're struck by how powerful the changes are and how quickly the changes occur. So how can we explain such powerful and rapid improvements in human happiness? Well, Shelly brings together two very powerful approaches. There's the power of psychotherapy, particularly the behaviorally oriented type of therapy where people are given specific assignments and there's accountability and support for making those behavior changes. So she provides a very powerful form of therapy and combines that with something called mindfulness. Mindfulness can be understood by anyone. Most people have had the experience of mindfulness sometime in their life. They may not realize that they had that experience until it's pointed out. But mindfulness is something that is actually very natural for people. The extraordinary discovery that has been made in many ages and in many cultures and has been now discovered again in our time in a very mainstream way, is that mindfulness is something that can be systematically cultivated. You can elevate your base level of mindfulness, how mindful you are in ordinary life, in day-to-day activities when you're not particularly trying to be mindful. That can be elevated with systematic practice. So what Shelly brings to her therapy, and the reason why we see these extraordinary, rapid improvements is, okay, you've got cognitive behavioral therapy on one hand, a powerful discipline. Now that's being combined with the systematic cultivation of mindfulness skills. They come together and the results are there. So, as I say, mindfulness is something that you have probably already experienced. You may not have had the vocabulary for it. It may have only been briefly. And you may not have realized that you could cultivate it and strengthen it systematically. But chances are, if you've lived life, you have had occasion to experience either the positive effects of mindfulness or the negative effects that come about when you don't have mindfulness. So if you think back on your life, see if you can remember a time when you dropped into a state of extraordinary high concentration. It could have been in a sporting event. It could have been in a situation where you were experiencing some very great challenge. Sometimes this happens to people if they're in a dangerous situation where they could be injured or they think they're going to die or they're attacked. Look back on your life. See if you can remember a time when you dropped into a state where you were extraordinarily present and focused. It can happen in sports. In fact, in sports, it's called being in the zone. So if you look back on that time, you'll remember that you were able to concentrate very well on what was going on. So you had at that time a high state of concentration. Well, concentration is an attentional skill, and it can be cultivated through systematic practice. You could also think back on your life and see if there was ever a time when you were passing through some great challenge of some sort, maybe some physical discomfort, maybe even an emotional discomfort, and for whatever reason, you stopped fighting with that discomfort. You just sort of said, okay, I'll open myself up to fully experience this. And when you did that, the sense of suffering or problem became less. If you ever had an experience like that, then you had a moment of dropping into what we technically call equanimity. Equanimity is another attentional skill. It's the ability to allow sensory experiences to rise up, stick around, and pass without pushing and pulling on them. Now, you may have also had an experience sometime in your life where you were extraordinarily clear in your senses. Everything seemed very vivid and bright and well-defined in what you were seeing or hearing or experiencing in your body. You dropped into a state of sensory clarity. Well, sensory clarity is another attentional skill. It's the ability to untangle the different elements of your sensory experience. What part is visual? What part is auditory? What part is somatic? And so forth. So you have probably sometime in your life had the experience of spontaneously going into a high state of concentration or a deep state of equanimity or a state of great sensory clarity. If that ever happened to you, then you experienced part of mindfulness. What mindfulness is those three things all happening at the same time. It's a special state, a special relationship to inner and outer sensory experience. And that special state is characterized by three things: high concentration, equanimity, and sensory clarity. That's a skill that can be systematically cultivated. As the result of that, uncomfortable experiences cause less and less suffering. Even if they don't go away, the sense of problem goes away. That's an extraordinary result. And we hear that over and over again in the reports of Shelly's clients. In some cases, the pain or even the emotion was still there, but it was less of a problem for that person. It is also true that these same skills can make pleasant experiences be more fulfilling. And they're also useful for behavior change, because behaviors are controlled by our mental images, our mental talk, our physical and emotional body sensations. And if you can be mindful with your mental images, your mental talk, your physical and emotional body sensations, then they lose the ability to drive and distort your behavior. And that's why people who were Shelly's clients were able to make important behavior changes in their life. They applied those techniques, and it affected their objective behavior. So the reports that you are hearing that are so inspiring from Shelly's clients are the result of reduction of suffering, elevation of fulfillment, positive behavior change, and so forth, brought about by bringing together the power of systematic mindfulness training with the power of cognitive behavioral therapy.